I want to make a couple quick comments about the Jakelin call. So Jakelin Call is a migrant, 7-year-old who had died on the border, and this situation is just absolute bullshit from the top to bottom. The Border Patrol folks are doing damage control. They're in damage control right now because this thing had happened December 8th, December 9th. So she starts walking December 1st and then gets here December 6th. And then is dead just after midnight, December 8th, and it's December, 19th, 20th now, so we just learned about this a couple days ago. So for about a week, they sat on it. There was even somebody who testified in Congress that said, is there anything that we should know about? And they said no, and of course there is something for us to know about. The Congress wanted to investigate the Border Patrol agents. There's 3 or 4 of them that were on the scene. So you had 3 or 4 Border Patrol agents that were on the scene. Congress wants to investigate them, but the Border Patrol agent says that they get to take our tax dollars and take official authority status, right? They're the authorities, and yet they're not going to tell us what the fuck they did. They're not going to say what the fuck happened. They're going to be all secretive about this shit. And that's, Congress has got subpoena power, so it's actually, insane that they're not able to investigate somebody that's in our own government. Now, when it comes to who's to blame for this, I think a percentage is to blame for the father and a percentage is to blame on the Border Patrol agents. Exactly who gets the bulk of that blame, the autopsy report will come out. And so let's talk about that, okay? So water. We all need food, water, right? Food, water, clothing. There's a lot of things that we need. I got a list of facts here. I'll come back to that. I want to talk about the water. So water. We need water. How often do we need water? We need water pretty frequently, like every few hours. Within 4 hours, you need to drink a half a quart of water. You need to drink at least 8 glasses of water every day. For a full-grown man, I looked it up, and so there's, it's on the internet. I read that Mahatma Gandhi had survived 21 days without food. So the body could live without food a lot longer than they could live without water. Water is so important. Dehydration. If dehydration causes more than a loss of 10% of your body weight, that's a medical emergency. And if it's not reversed, it could lead to death. 60% of the adult body is made up of water. Every living cell in the body needs water. So on average, a person could survive without water for about 3 days. This is a full-grown adult. A full-grown adult, a full-grown man, possibly, if you stretch it, 10 days in temperatures of 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 7 days, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 days in 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So it depends on if you're doing any physical activity. It depends on the heat, how hot it is during the day. So 7 days, temperature, 60, okay, so that's assuming no physical activity. So they're walking. So they're walking for, several hours. There's physical activity. That part of the area I heard was hot, about 70 degrees. So 7 degrees cuts it down from 7 to, so about 3 to 7 days, depending on, the body and the situation. 3 to 7 days is what it takes for a full-grown adult man to die of starvation or to die of dehydration. So we need water. We need water within days. I think it's more, we need water within hours, especially for children. But let's go with these numbers, okay? 3 to 7. So 3 to 7, and a kid is 50 pounds versus 200 pounds. So a kid is about a fourth of an adult male. So if it takes 3 to 7 days, is about 4 to 8? A fourth of 4 to 8 is 1 to 2 days. So a child that doesn't get any water, 1 to 2 days, they're out. Again, I'm more prone to believe within hours, maybe 8 hours. If a child is walking and it's high temperature, and humans are pretty. When it comes to us in our infant age, we're weaklings. We are embarrassing little tiny weaklings. And so, kids need water. Kids need water. Water needs to be, plentiful, and you need to drink it at regular and frequent intervals. So, maybe a gallon or 2 a day. So the father should have known better. The Border Patrol agents should have known better. So the bulk of the blame right now, we're looking for the autopsies. We haven't seen an autopsy come out yet. So essentially it takes, what, 1 to 2 days, right? We just established for a kid, it takes 1 to 2 days, 2 days maximum. One day they could die within 1 day without having water. I think that, you know, maybe, 12 hours, especially with physical activity on a hot day. So a kid can die of dehydration very, very easily, very quickly. You have to pay attention to this. So is it possible the kid was in the Border Patrol agent's custody for 8 hours? Is it possible that they didn't get any water for those 8 hours and that contributed to her death? Yes, absolutely. 1 to 2 days is all you need, and that could have been the 8 hours, right, that you could have saved her. You could have saved her if you would have actually paid attention and asked questions and showed that you gave a damn. But these Border Patrol agents, they are bad. You got pediatrician groups coming out. They're sitting there saying that we need health people there. What these assholes, these are right-wing fascist assholes. All they know how to do is beat people up over the head, get them in custody, lock them up, and put them in a pen, put them in a jail. And this the pen in Lordsburg, which is 90 miles north, right? So we're taking the migrants and we're driving them 90 miles north to Lordsburg. So we're getting them further into the United States. But the specific behavior of the 3 or 4 border agents is absolutely imperative. That's the last 8 hours of her death. They're going to have, all this heroic shit after she's already dead. So she dies on the bus ride to Lordsburg. There was one bus. The first bus takes a bunch of accompanied children. They also separated her. They separated Jakelin from her father because that's the policy, to separate the family at the border. You got to separate those families, right? Well, she's 7 years old. She loves her father. That's the reason they said that she was allowed to go, because she was inseparable from her father. She wanted to go, so, that's essentially what the story is. The mother seems crazily cavalier and callous about the whole goddamn thing, but I guess she wants the husband to make some money because they live on $5 a day. So they're coming from a very poor part of Guatemala. They're coming from the Quiche neighborhood. The Quiche, there was a genocide in Quiche perpetuated by Ronald Reagan. The 1954 coup d'etat fucked this family up. Jakelin definitely was touched by the 1954 coup d'etat and the 36-year war, civil war that had been caused after the coup d'etat because of our intervention. Apparently in 1954, the United States government did not believe in democracy or democratically elected leadership. If you elect a democratic socialist, well, hell, it's okay for right-wing fascists to go in there and depose of your government. That's what Eisenhower did in 1954 to Guatemala. Fucked Guatemala up, foodbarred the shit out of Guatemalan history, and for 36 years they had a civil war where they would see at least 250,000 Guatemalans killed. So that's what the United States and other nations support, right-wing dictatorships, not democracy, not elections, not what we said we went into Iraq for, but we defended Chiquita Banana. We defended the multinational corporations. Chiquita Banana had a bunch of land that they stole, and Chiquita Banana, then they had a land reform, so they were getting the land back, and now they don't have the damn land, and since we went ahead and intervened into their damn country, you have all this refugee crisis. Jakelin is definitely a product. Jakelin and her family is definitely a product of U.S. imperialism, specifically in the Quiche massacre happened in 1981 to 83, and then specifically her family was a part of all this. So our foreign policy has touched her life. So like the Honduran crisis, all the refugees from Honduras we should take in, all the refugees from Syria we should take in when we create the damn, situation, and that's a good way to actually help somebody peacefully. You don't intervene, but you take in the refugees. And then for them assholes, those people that want to sit there and act like we were in Syria for humanitarian reasons, that's why we were in Syria. Okay, then how come we're not invading Rohingya or Malaysia right now? You got a massacre, you got a genocide of the Rohingya Muslims that's been going on for a fucking year. What about Yemen? There's been a genocide that's been going on in Yemen for a year and a half. We don't intervene when there's genocide. We don't intervene. We are the world's empire and we suck at it. We're the world's policemen, but we don't stop genocide. So don't give me no goddamn humanitarian fucking bullshit. It's a war for empire. Syria is a war for empire. Now, if we cared about other nations and countries, we would intervene when genocide has happened. Right now, the Rohingya Muslims and I want to say Malaysia, right? With the King Son, whatever that lady is, who is Miss Democracy. So now, no, not Malaysia. Why do I keep Bangladesh? So in Bangladesh, and my point is, there's 2 fucking genocides, and I guarantee if I look into it more, there's probably going to be more shit that's happening all over the fucking world. And we're not intervening, but we got to go into Syria. We must, fuck that. General Wesley Clark pointed out that Syria was one of the 7 countries that the Bush administration wanted to invade to expand the empire. It's a war for empire. It's a war for empire. Yeah, we're doing it for humanitarian reasons. For the Kurds, let's invite the Kurds over here. Let's establish Kurdistan as its own nation. Let's adopt Kurdistan as the 51st state. So if you're truly you actually give a shit about the Kurds, but these assholes, they don't say shit. They just regurgitate whatever the damn TV tells them to regurgitate. You could tell an MSNBC watcher because they act like they're on the right side, but really they're just like, hey, I saw on the TV. So that was just a little bit about Syria. Come back to this lady. So, R.I.P. Jakelin Cow. She's 7 years old. Jakelin Cow didn't do nothing to nobody. You have a lot of politicians coming out. Hillary Clinton, she wasn't good with immigration. Maybe she can, change, turn over a new leaf. She said there's no words to capture the horror of a 7-year-old girl dying of dehydration in U.S. custody. What's happening at our borders is a humanitarian crisis. She's absolutely right. The death of Jakelin, it was, she died of sepsis shock. She died of shock. She died of her liver failing. She had a swollen brain. So it was agony. She died in pain. She died suffering. She suffered all the time, up until the time that she died. Whose fault is it? It takes a day for a child to die of dehydration. Is it possible that the father didn't give her, enough food and water? Yeah, that's absolutely possible. In fact, it's more likely because it was only 8 hours, right? The Border Patrol agents only had her for 8 hours, and it takes 24 hours for dehydration to set in. So that means she didn't have water. The father did not provide her with enough water. And the story is they bust by themselves, and they were about an hour and a half away from the border, and then they walked with a group of 163 people. So they didn't just cross by themselves. They were with a group of people. And so I believe that both the father and the border agents are to blame. Both of them are to blame. So the father, might have let her dehydrate for 3/4 of the day, but the Border Patrol agents finished her off. The Border Patrol agents did not give a damn. It's, 3 or 4 of them versus 163. They were more worried about tying them all up and put them in a corner. They didn't have the facility, so they just got one big building. So they got to have 2 people just to stand guard so they're not running away, right? And they're not concerned about the water and the food. So there's a lot of reports about this, okay? So there was one report about the guy said when he was a Border Patrol agent, they captured a bunch of migrants. Somebody wanted some water, and then they went to go get water, and then the commander said, hey, don't you give them that water. Why not? Because we don't give a damn. We got to play it hard. We got to be, stone cold Steve Austin them. So that's the culture. That's the culture of the Border Patrol. It is that they're fascists. They're not there to help anybody. In fact, the culture, the policy is when you find water, because some people leave gallons of water for the migrants in the middle of the desert, so when they come across it, they don't die of starvation or dehydration. In fact, there's one county where there's like 100 migrants found dead, I want to say every month, maybe at least every year, possibly every month. So 100 migrants just die of starvation in the desert. So people would put gallons of water out in the desert. Well, now our strong border policy is to go ahead and dump the water out on the ground. Leave the damn water there, Jesus Christ. We don't want them in our country, but if they're peacefully coming over here, a little kid, a 7-year-old. So the Border Patrol agents are responsible. They're responsible. They're the ones, she died in their custody. And they want to sit there, everybody, I keep hearing this shit repeated over and over again, but they're in damage control. This shit happened a week ago. So the actual events, everything else has been buried. Of course, those border agents should be investigated. Of course, that border patrol area and the little Sally Fort or whatever, and then the Lordsburg, all that in New Mexico where this happened needs to be investigated, and they need to answer our questions. You're a public official. You answer our questions. Why did why did she die under your custody? But they're playing, they don't take any blame. They don't take any responsibility for their own behavior. A 7-year-old died because of a father that was stupid, and border patrol agents that were negligent. At the very at the very best, you could say that they were negligent, or they were they just didn't straight up just didn't give a shit. So the culture is definitely one of, but let's say, is there actually any reports about, this specific? Yeah, just recently you had a congressional delegation that went down there, and they said that the facility was jam-packed with families lacking sufficient medical care, poorly equipped to care for children. So there's no medical attention whatsoever. Do they have food and water? So they apparently, the outlets, the thing that I was getting frustrated with earlier, was that they kept saying that, he said that he told the consulate that everything was fine and dandy. He took blame for it all. He said the Border Patrol agents acted perfectly, but it was all his fault. He's the one that's responsible. Shut the fuck up. So that's just them basically saying, he signed a confession. It's his fault. Immediately, it's damage control. They're running away from the thing, pretending they didn't have anything to do with it when they're the ones, maybe it's 50-50 because, the father for most of the day dehydrated her, but then she dehydrates to death in their care. And then after she's dead, they 8 hours later, they're finally busting her up to Lordsburg. When she gets in the bus, he said that she was vomiting. They didn't give a shit. They didn't get a helicopter when they found out she was vomiting. They didn't, they said that they offered food and water and that he signed some document in Spanish saying that everything was good and grand. But that's, again, yeah, all right. That's what the Border Patrol agents did. They captured 163 of them. 4 people captured 163, and they were just like, hey, here's a brand new buffet. Here's a good big old meal. There's a cornucopia of food. Let's just give them a shit ton of, a whole bunch of food and water. Let's just, give them housing too. Shit, we care so goddamn. We don't give housing to our own people, let alone anybody else. Food and water. Half of us don't even believe that Americans are obligated or have a right to food and water, which is fucked up. Of course you got a right to food and water, especially when those things are plentiful. But specifically, this facility, Al Green goes down there, so it's jam-packed with families lacking sufficient medical care, poorly equipped to care for children. Perhaps there's food, perhaps there's water there, but for some reason, she didn't get enough. And when you're dehydrating, once you've already lost 10%, you need to, you need nutrients. You need to get on an IV. But after she was dead, they get a helicopter. They revive her dead body twice. So you got a zombie, and then they, fight as hard as they can once she's dead. So for 15 hours, they're not going to actually declare an official declaration of death until 15 hours later. But for the first 8 hours, she's sitting there in the facility. So they cross the border at the 163. There's a building that they just shove them all in there for about 5 hours, and then they're busing her up, north. And then when she finally gets there, it's it's only an hour and a half for regular people, but for some reason it's a 3-hour bus ride for them. Once they finally get up there, she's not breathing. And then they said they revived her, and then they, helicoptered her. But they separated her right at the border, so that's a shock to a little 7-year-old system. She's attached to her father, so she's dehydrating. She's initially separated, and then she's not given the medical care, definitely. Whether she was given food or water, I guess that's in dispute. They said that he signed an agreement saying that they didn't need food or water. So if they signed that agreement, then did they give her food or water? Because he said no, right? They signed an agreement that he was doing A-OK. And that's another thing. They're making him sign an agreement. Well, George Washington signed an agreement with the French Army. He went and killed a bunch of French out in Ohio, and that started the French and Indian War. So that battle, he just massacred the shit out of a bunch of French. But at Fort Necessity, they captured George Washington right after he did that, and they forced him to sign this thing, and he said he was coerced in signing a confession about murdering. They said that he murdered the general. They murdered this commander. He signed it, but then later on they said, well, it was written in French. George Washington didn't know what he was signing, so, you know, they just got captured by U.S. authorities whose fascists yelling, do this, do that, now sign this. All right, fine, fuck, if I sign this, will you not beat the shit out of me? So, you know, I don't think you can really trust any document that's signed under duress in jail. And when you're in jail, you're a prisoner. You don't have freedom, so you don't have any, what kind of contractual authority do you actually have when you're in jail? So Al Green, he looked at it and he said he saw children stacked in holding cells and huddled in foil blankets on concrete floors alongside toilets lacking privacy screens. So they got these open toilets, right? Everybody's got shit in front of each other. They're foil blankets, foil, so like tin foil, that's the only blankets they got on concrete floors. So that's what Jakelin came to. She's sleeping on the floor in concrete in a foil blanket. She's dying of dehydration. And they showed no, you know, they got to be tough. So they weren't going to give any of these people water unless they had to. I don't know, what's a water line cost to get water out there? There's cows that just drink right out of the Rio Grande. So is the Rio Grande just for cattle? We don't even let humans drink out of the Rio Grande. The cattle are shitting in our water too. So the cattle can drink our water, they can shit in our water, but humans can't drink our damn water? So Al Green said the only reason that the places were even still up because the cameras didn't get in there. If the cameras would have gone into the facility, they would have shut it down. Because again, the children are stacked in holding cells. So this is sardines. They're just being packed in there, and they're sleeping on the floor in foil blankets on concrete floors. So, you know, this is a really bad deal. This is a really bad deal. This is 8 hours. The Border Patrol didn't give a shit. There's the pediatricians, the medical community is coming out and saying, like, look, as soon as they come into if we're going to arrest them and then we're going to put them in our custody, then we're responsible for them. We got to make sure they're not going to die on our hands. Once they're dead, all of a sudden they gave a shit. All of a sudden they're bringing fucking helicopters and shit in order to save this 7-year-old girl once she's dead. But they had her for 8 hours. They had her for 8 hours, and then within just a day, you know, 27 hours, I think, total, they declared her dead. So, you know, I say blame the father, blame the Border Patrol agents. There's 3 or 4 Border Patrol agents in there, and blame the policy. If the policy, you know, if they weren't equipped with all the things that they need to be equipped with, which would be an excuse. The fact that the Border Patrol agents said that they're not going to answer any questions, the Border Patrol agents are playing, you know, this like, well, you know, we committed atrocities, and now we ain't going to say shit because you're going to hold us responsible. We don't want to be held responsible for any crimes that we commit. So the child's death is a direct consequence of the savage repression of immigrants by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency. This is also under the Department of Homeland Security. So that's pretty much the bulk of it right there. The culture indicates it. This investigation into it makes it sound like the way that they're reacting, they're guilty as fuck. A 7-year-old is not supposed to die. So if you just try to think of, you know, what, this land is your land, this land is my land. So, okay, yeah, you're not allowed to trespass on my land. Don't trespass on my land. But if a little kid trespasses on my land, I don't capture that kid and then put that kid in a cage and then starve them and dehydrate them to death. That's not who I am as an American. As an American, I'm the opposite of that. Okay? If you're trespassing on someone's land, you can't trespass on people's land. But that's a petty offense compared to starving and dehydrating someone to death, especially a little girl. You know, you can blame the father, blame the Border Patrol agents, but how can you say, well, it's Jakelin, she made really bad choices. She's a 7-year-old girl. So I don't think you could really blame her for much of anything. She's completely innocent on this. So an innocent girl died, and, you know, justice is an eye for an eye. We do need to get some kind of justice for this. There's a march in January. A lot of actually things have already changed. So her death is bringing about a lot of changes already. The FBI they used to do background checks on everybody in the household, and they were able to arrest more people because when they applied for asylum, they found out that there were, you know, illegals living in the sponsor's house. So they made it easier. They streamlined the FBI application file, and then they also they're doing something else about the unaccompanied children. The big Central American thing. So they're giving $6 billion to Central America. So we're helping build up Central America, specifically Guatemala, Honduras, and I want to say El Salvador. So the $6 billion is going to go. So this just happened, right? So don't tell me that they're not in damage control mode. Don't tell me that he's not changing these major fucking policies because he's just a nice guy. All of a sudden he's just going to be a decent fucking dude. No, this girl died. They died on their hands. It's their fucking fault, and they need to pay for it. At the very least, they need to lose their damn jobs. You're not going to answer questions? What kind of public official are you? We pay you your tax dollars. If you killed a person or somebody dies on your watch, write an explanation. Give us some kind of statement. Give us some kind of comment. In fact, charges. The charges should be filed. Murder charges should be filed on the father and on the Border Patrol agents, and let our great criminal justice system deal with them, right? This is America. We have the courts and the criminal justice system. That's how this thing works. So file criminal charges on them. It's not a slaughterhouse, rocket docket slaughterhouse. This is, where justice happens. If there's a conflict that happens in the United States of America, you just go to the judicial branch and they go ahead and they, get it all figured out for you. So let's go ahead and just use the American criminal justice system, the great American criminal justice system. We spend all that money for judges. We pay for their pensions. We pay for the prosecutors. We pay for so much. Let's actually use the court system. So let's charge them with murder. Let's charge them with a crime. They got a grand jury to go to first, a grand jury indictment. And this is shit that Louisville police did to me for walking to the goddamn store. So shit, if, a person walking to the store is such a big goddamn threat. So let's be equal. Let's do, do unto others as we'd have them do unto us. So put murder charges on them and let's see where the chips fall after that, right? They got to prove their case. So let them prove their damn case. She had to die, right? She had to get dehydrated and die. And she died of sepsis shock. Her liver failed. Her brain was swollen. She had 2 heart attacks. She liked to climb trees. She loved her father. She was excited about coming to the United States of America. The 1954 coup d'etat fucked not only Guatemala's history up, it fucked her family up. So we fucked her family up. They only live on $5 a day. They're poor as fuck. Maybe they shouldn't have gone somewhere else, but $5 a day, they could get a job here and then, make what, $80 a day, and the 80 bucks, versus $5 a day, that's a, huge difference. They can survive, on 80 bucks probably the whole month, right? So whether or not they should stay in their own country and fix their own country or, try to come to America, that's a rock and a hard place. So that's not the decision. I think the decision that I'm criticizing the father most is not having enough water and food on the way there. A lot of times they have to share a can of tuna. They got to share a bottle of water. And when they get into groups, they get this group think going on where they think that they got plenty. Oh, yeah, we got plenty of water and food. We could do this, right? Because you got that solidarity. Everybody's going to back each other. So they get overconfident with how much water and food that they got. So nobody fed and gave this, this 7-year-old girl. So R.I.P. Jakelin call. Jakelin did not deserve to die. So R.I.P. to Jakelin. And that's, right now, I will put it 50-50 is the way it feels like to me, 50-50. So the father, dehydrated half of her, but the Border Patrol agents dehydrated the rest of her and made sure she went into septic shock and had a horrible, horrible death. And they knew she was vomiting. They didn't get a goddamn helicopter when she was vomiting. They waited an hour and a half after they found out that that it was finally reported that she was vomiting, and then they didn't give a damn the whole goddamn time. They also separated her from the very beginning. So sepsis shock. Hell, she probably had a heart attack when she was separated from her father. Anyways, there was some report about she had been sick on the way there too. So my guess is that both the Border Patrol agents and the father need to be charged with murder, and then let our criminal justice system handle this, right? And why do we pay tax? Why do we pay all these people taxes if, there's a probable cause that a crime may have been committed? So, just charge them with a crime. They're innocent until proven guilty. Our, judicial system is so fair and wonderful. We just passed that judicial, system bill, right? So let's use the criminal justice system, and let's see if the Border Patrol, let's see what a jury of, American peers, hell, they might even let the Border Patrol agents go. But at the very least, let's, do to the Border Patrol agents that they do to migrant children all the time. So what their crime was, they crossed illegally. If there's a little kid that trespasses on my land, that's a crime. if they, trespass on my land, but they don't deserve death. If they trespass on my land, if you're an adult male and you're coming towards me and I'm, afraid, I got a right to defend myself. If you're a little kid, well, I'll assess that. Is that a threat, right? Vietnamese kids had bombs on them, so, I think that's a little crazy, a little bit too much, but it's possible, right? So, if I see a little kid and I assess that a little tiny 7-year-old, girl, Jakelin, if I see 7-year-old Jakelin coming up